Hi, my name is Dr. Mike Coven, and if you're watching this, you're probably a principal, an administrator, or a college educator, a professor of ed classes who has gotten this video from either one of the teachers I work with or someone who I have consulted with over the last couple of years. Now, I've been consulting informally one-on-one with teachers over the last couple of years using a program I call the Business of School. Now, the Business of School is a program that has about 25 key points in it, and they are taken from the business world and applied to teaching in order to have us become better teachers. Now, we all know that the idea, the concept nowadays is for teaching to become much more business-like. Teachers are resisting it. They're resisting it mainly because of the word business. So I want to get that out of teachers' heads. I want to change the thinking of teachers so they can begin to think not so much business, but goal setting, prioritization, time management, key aspects that we use in a professional setting outside of teaching that can be applied seamlessly and beautifully into the classroom. How do I know this? I've been teaching for about 14 years. During those 14 years, I've taught Earth Science Regents for about 8 years. During that time, I've had 3 students fail the exam. I have a very high percent of students passing. Out of the students who passed, about 50% of them got over 90. Now, I'm teaching in a school right now that is 100% Spanish-speaking English language learners who have been here about 3 or 4 years. My track record last year, 100% passed the chemistry regents. The chemistry regents for English language learners who have been here only 3 or 4 years. In my school, our passing rate for the regents is about anywhere from 10 to 35%. What's my secret? Well, my secret is using the business protocols and forms and procedures that I have taken from my practice. What practice? Prior to teaching, I was a doctor. I'm still a doctor, but I was a chiropractor in practice for about 15 years. Highly successful practice. I took from no patients, opening the front door, to about 300 patients a week when I sold it before I became a teacher. What was my secret there? It was using business procedures and protocols. When my practice was failing my first year, I realized I needed help. And I hooked up with a couple of practice management consultants, and they showed me, they explained to me that you have to stop thinking about this as just being kind, compassionate, and wonderful and caring as many of our teachers see teaching is. It is a business. So what they showed me was they said, you can be compassionate, you can be caring, and you can be kind, you can be understanding, you can be empathetic. But at the same time, you need to keep in mind, you also need to keep your doors open. You need to be able to treat your patients. And if you do not have a business up and running, you will not be able to treat patients. So what I did was I became great at goal setting, time management, prioritization, accumulating data to use it in a data-driven practice. Now, we love to throw that term around, data-driven education. And I cannot think of one moment when I've heard that word in schools that I can apply it outside of my classroom to what I did in the office. Data-driven management or procedures, or in our case, education, is when you are collecting data. You are analyzing it statistically. You are making changes in what you do. For us, that is teaching. You are then assembling more data based on the changes you made, reanalyzing those statistics, and then making changes. Again, this is a fluid thing that takes place. This is not something where we just assemble data for our students, put it in a file, and so when our administrators come into the room, we can show them the book. This is something that we have to use in our practices, in our classrooms, for the sole purpose of actually telling us when our numbers are down, when our numbers are up, and how we're going to change them to make them as good as possible for the benefit of the student. And that really is our goal. So the Business of School program I put together has about 25 points and topics that I talk to teachers about. Today I'd like to talk with you about 2 of them. One we're going to spend a little bit of time on. The other one we're going to spend just a few minutes on. But the first one is attendance. Now, attendance is crucial. It is a critical aspect of what we do and who we are. We need to have our students in the classroom ready to go when the bell goes. Why is this so important? Well, let's go back to my practice. As a doctor, when we had patients in, and you're seeing 300 patients a week, you need to have those people, those patients, keep their appointed schedules on time as best as possible. If they are not there, kind of messes everything up. If a student is not in your classroom on time, kind of messes things up for everybody there. In the practice, if we had a patient who was late 5 minutes, front desk would call, "Hello, Mr. Smith, just letting you know, this is Dr. Cubbin's office, you've missed your appointment." At that point, they would reschedule or the patient would be on their way. Why was that so important for us to do that? Patient says, "I'm a minute away, 2 minutes away." So why is it important we call? It's important we call because it's important to let the patient know that they are there, they have a certain time to be there, and they have a certain responsibility. If we did not call, the patient would think two things right away. First thing they would think is, "Oh, I missed my appointment, they didn't call. Obviously, that is not important, that I'm there for my appointment." Second thing right into that is that, well, if they're not calling and it's not important that I'm there, then the treatment they are providing me is not important. Now let's look at this in our classrooms. Student is late once, student is late twice. We don't call the house. What does it tell the student? Late to class, not assuming responsibility for themselves because that is part of being a student, and they go home and the parent says, "How was school today?" "It was great, no problem at all." The student knows he was late, but the parents don't know that he was late. So that says to the student, "Oh, I guess it's okay that I'm late, that's acceptable." And by doing that, it puts an idea in the student's mind. Well, if I'm late, same thing as the patient. If I'm late, what that means is that it wasn't important that I was there in the first place. And if it wasn't important for me to be there in the first place, what is the point of being there? So we wonder, how do we get kids on task? How do we get them to think school is important? I bet you, if you took a poll of all the students in your school and all the latenesses and absences and on times, I bet you that you would find that the students who find the classes to be most relevant are the ones that they are on time for, because they have it in their mind, that class is important and I'm going to be on time for that class. Now, every teacher at one time or another has run into this problem. Parent comes up, parent-teacher conference, parent comes up, and you're sitting there and you say, "Mrs. Smith, as you can see, little Johnny was late 3 times during the course of the semester." She says, "Well, that's funny because the other 5 teachers that I just spoke with, they also said he was late." And then she looks at you and says, "Why didn't anybody call me? Why didn't anybody call me on my son who was late for school?" What do we say? What can we say? The only possible reason we are not calling is if our class is not important. Now, I know a lot of teachers will say, "Oh boy, I called that house before. I don't want to deal with them again." Let me explain something to you. We would call patients, and sometimes they would get irate, and sometimes they would come in, they'd say, "Why are you calling me again?" We'd say, "Because we have other appointments to keep." And if you come in late, or if you come in after your appointed time, then you're going to mess it up for other people. Sometimes we've lost patients because of that. Unfortunate, but it's just part of doing business. Now, sometimes when you call up a parent, and the parent might say, "You know what? This is the 5th time you're calling me this week. I think you're picking on my son, and I'm going to come up to school, and I'm going to talk with your assistant principal." Well, Mrs. Smith, I'll tell you right now, here's when I'm available. You can speak with the assistant principal and make sure that they get me from my class when you come in. Now, it's important to know that that is not a bad thing. Sometimes teachers are afraid to get parents irate. They're afraid to get them up. But I'll tell you right now, if you're calling a parent and the parent's angry, they're not angry at you. They're really angry at their child for not going to class on time or cutting school or doing whatever they're doing. Okay? So now it's important that we get them on the phone. Once we get them on the phone, it's absolutely critical that we say the right things. When I first started teaching, I was told this. Here's what you want to do. You want to start, administrator told me, you want to start out every phone call home with a positive comment. Like something like this. "Hi, Mrs. Smith. Just wanted to let you know that this is Dr. Cubbin calling, and I want to tell you how great it is having Johnny in my class. He's a wonderful student. He's a pleasure to teach. Things look really good for this year. But he was late 3 times this week, and it interfered with the progress in the class. And she would say, well, think, you just told me how great he is. So now you're telling me that he's late. So if he's late, how could he be so great? Are you being honest with me, 100% honest, or are you just shielding me from something that I don't know? This sets up a very bad precedent. You have to say, you have to be able to use a script, certain wording with a parent to let them know exactly what the situation is. In no uncertain terms, you don't want to be rude, you don't want to be disrespectful, but you do have to get the message across to them that something's going on and this is why you're calling. So with the Business of School protocol, I have assembled scripting for calling home. And that is very effective, that any teacher can use and any teacher could learn. If we have some time today, I will show some of it to you and I'll demonstrate exactly how it works. When we would call for a patient, or when a patient is expecting a call from us, and if I call up and I say, hi, Mr. Smith, calling about your appointment on Tuesday, I just want to let you know that I looked at your x-rays and the alignment looks good in your spine, there's no degeneration there, and everything looks great, except I found a mass that's about the size of a grapefruit next to your spine, and it looks like cancer. And he would say, didn't you just say that my spine looks great and everything's wonderful and you had good news for me? He would think I'm a complete fool. Either that or that I'm incompetent. When you call up and you have bad news for a patient, it doesn't necessarily have to be put in a bad way. It's very matter of fact, the phone call home. And we don't want to confuse calling a parent or a patient with having to be aggressive. Or even if something's wrong in the classroom, we don't want to give the parent the idea that we are against the student, because we're not. We're calling because we care about the student. So what we need to do is we need to have students understand that that is important. We need to have parents understand that the scripting is important. You also need to know that if a parent comes up to school, and this is critical, and it's going to get into the point of observations I'm going to talk about in a little bit. If a parent comes up, you need to show the parent in no uncertain terms what their sons or daughters' grades look like compared to their absences and latenesses. Now, chances are, you and I know, that if you have a student that's late 20 times, their grades are going to be down here. You know that, I know that. But we need to be able to put that in some type of a statistical graph or setting or data chart so that the parents can understand it. Granted, the computerized grade books that we have are wonderful. They are wonderful for collecting data and for doing some analysis as well. But we really need to go one step further. And especially when a parent comes up. That's why I don't think it's bad when a parent comes up. I like when parents come up. I never end up on a bad set of terms with the parents once they're there. If I can sit down and talk with them, I can always convince them, parent to parent, what I'm trying to do for their child. But we need to be able to show them in black and white, in no uncertain terms, what is being done to help their son or daughter. Now, when we get back to goal setting and data management and data-driven education or data-driven procedures in the classroom, you need to know that you have got to have a set of data that is going to show not just you, and this is going to get us into our observations, not just you, but your administrators. Show them that what you're doing is actually collecting data to make a difference. So you should be able to show your administrators when they come in. If you have a high record of latenesses or absences, I'm sure it'll demonstrate low grades. And if you have low latenesses or low absences, you will also be able to usually demonstrate higher grades. If you have high latenesses or missed classes, missed classes, you need to bring that down. The only way to bring that down is to have the call home. It's the only possible way to do it. You can sit and talk to that student till you are, as they say, blue in the face. But until you get a parent on the phone or up into the school, things are not going to change. Let's get to the observations. Now, observations. Again, having that data for your administrators, it's key. That's just one component out of When I say I have about 25 basic points to the business of school program, that's just one set of data you're keeping. And it's a very worthwhile set of data. Observations. And we all get these in the emails from Ed Week or Ed Times or Ed News, things like that online. And one of our practice management consultants, I would say this consultant is probably one of the top 5 out there that I see frequently their name in the papers. And I saw that recently they put forth the question. This was a question they proposed to teachers. Would you rather have many low intensity or many informal observations, frequent informal observations in your class for your principal to come in and watch you, to observe you, rather than a few full lesson, full tilt boogie, full-blown formal observations? So they were asking, do you want a lot of the informals, or would you rather have a few of the formals? When I saw this, I thought for a second, I thought I was losing my mind. This is one of our top consultants. This is where the idea came that I need to go out and speak to teachers. The idea that a consultant would actually propose whether we should have informal, formal, a lot or little. Shouldn't we be prepared every day to have an administrator walk through that door? Shouldn't we be ready with our lesson plan every day? Shouldn't we be ready to go every day, even if that principal came in 3 times for 3 different classes? Shouldn't we be ready to go? Of course we should. So shouldn't that management consultant say, starting right now, you are going to be ready every single day? It's not that easy for us to do. Why is it not that easy? Attendance, classroom management, and homework. How do we solve those problems? Well, the first foot in the door is the phone call home. So if you can get your parents on the phone on a regular basis for students who are having difficulty getting to school on time, doing homework, or performing properly in class, if you can speak to the parents regarding those issues, you are going to be much better prepared to have your lesson plans ready and ready for any type of observation when your principal or administrator comes in. Okay, so I've just given you a couple of ideas. Now I had to throw in that last part about the observation because I just couldn't believe what I read on the internet. Although maybe I shouldn't believe what I read on the internet. Anyway, if you're watching this and you think that your students who are going to be teachers, or your teachers who are in your class to be administrators, could benefit from hearing me talk about a couple of these ideas, and like I say, got a bunch of them, and I have the forms, I have the scripting, I have everything to go with them. And for you, I would be willing to come in, give you about half an hour. The only thing I ask is if I could bring a videographer with me to have some pictures taken while I'm in there. If it's a good idea and you think your students and your future administrators would benefit, contact me, Dr. Cubbin, drcubbin @yahoo.com, drcubbin @yahoo.com, or you can speak with the person who gave you this video. Either way, I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me speak.